All right, and we are back on the air. Welcome to another episode of the Napoleon and Gueco podcast. What's been going on with you?
What's up, man? Nothing much. Just watching the markets go up and up.
I've noticed that. It's been at an all-time high for a while, and I've been hearing talk for a long time about how, it's going up too much. There's going to be some recession. It's going to happen eventually. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. I know it doesn't happen a lot, but the last crash was around 2008. Do you think that we're coming up to another one of those in the near future?
I don't think it's as near as we might think. I think it might be further down the line. If you look at a lot of charts on different instruments, there seems to be a sideways movement right now. So it's some of the best traders that I follow predict that we're pretty much in a consolidation phase, and we could be in that range for about 10 years. Some of them that predicted that there's going to be a 10-year up and down in the same range, which the market has done on several occasions for a whole decade even. So I think we're kind of in the halfway through the consolidation phase. That's why you see a lot of downs and ups. We are up. I'm not saying that we're not climbing, but we might just be at the top of a range. But it's so hard to speculate, especially with the money printing situation and a lot of things going on, global markets, and also the U.S. election. U.S. plays a big role in the overall global market, and then also you have conflicts in different areas. So interesting times we're living in, especially. I mean, I would have assumed that the recession would have happened already.
Yeah, I did too.
Right? If there was one coming, maybe, after the pandemic, I would have kind of guessed that it would resume going down for a while. But no, we're in the midst of a upper trend, and we might make bigger highs, a lot bigger highs, and then the recession might come maybe 2, 3, 4 years from now. If it does come. I mean, who knows, right? But,
exactly, because I think I've brought up before that I use Acorns, which is like just some trading app where you can just buy a lot of stocks, exchange funds, all these other types of things in the market, which don't know as much about that as you, but it lets you trade and just basically, adjust the volatility of your account. If you want to go aggressive, it might go in on more stocks, but they jump up and down, but they all recommend over time. If you want to stay in this for the long run, 30, 40 years, you can go aggressive on your profile. You'll start to lose it at one point, but then you'll start to get it back. And that's what I keep waiting for, is for the recession to hit, because I know that we've talked about a lot of people like to panic, or a lot of people might be buying into the market now because it's at an all-time high, but I'm not trying to invest too much. I'll still do some dollar cost averaging, but I'm waiting for that recession to hit so then I can start investing more money every week. And that's what a lot of the experts say, is when it's going down, that's when you start to buy more. Don't panic, because when it's down, that's a good opportunity to buy in more. And I know so many people who, anytime the market crashes, when it comes back, let's just say it's at 40,000 right now, it crashes to 30,000 maybe, or even 25,000. So they will go and they'll start investing more. They'll start putting more money towards it because they'll see it as, hey, I can get a bunch of stocks and stuff for a lower price per share. Kind of like you go to the grocery store and they have something marked, buy 4 more, get them all for like $2 a piece at this point. So that's what you're going to do. You're going to go in on that sale. And the market works in a similar situation, but of course it's a lot more complicated. But when the market just goes back to 40,000, you would think, okay, it's back up, they have their money back. No, they actually have more money than before it crashed. And that's what I'm waiting for. I'm waiting for that time for it to go down so I can just start investing more. But I don't want to start doing that right now, because I feel like the moment I'll start putting more chips towards the market, they'll crash. Seems to be how it works with me. But also, that's what they say. You can't treat general stock trading like gambling. What's the whole idea with the money printing situation?
Well, what it basically does is it devalues the dollar, right? I mean, if there's, well, the Fed prints money because they need to, basically, because they just need to influx money into a lot of things that are not cash, like real estate and investments, and people can start companies, and basically productivity goes up with the influx of money, or so you would think that that would be the case, and that's pretty much the theory behind it. I would guess is just to give money, or just have more money in circulation so that people can produce things with it or start companies, whatever, invest, and that will pump up the prices of commodities and real estate and all that. But the problem with that is that you basically create a big problem with inflation, because the money is worth less and the commodities are worth more. So real estate goes up in value, all these stocks go up in value. So it's no surprise that we're seeing higher prices because of that. Because if you think about it, the more money it's out in circulation, the more money goes into these assets and different instruments. But the issue is, again, is that it crashes because you can only produce so much with the money. There's a lot of money that doesn't really have any value, and then at some point the recession comes because of that, because the bubble's so inflated that it bursts. But I will say one thing is, like, when you start to learn more about trading, the whole concept of buy low and sell high does not apply as much. It depends on the time frame, of course, but of course, like let's say right now, if you look at, let's say, Bitcoin, right, one of the most popular things that people talk about, and right now it's almost at the all-time high.
Yeah, about
again.
70,000.
It's right now, it hit 73,000 as of today.
Oh wow.
So okay, but the thing is, like, if you look at a monthly chart, right, and you know how candles are formed, right, candlestick patterns, and not to get complicated, but just the overall idea of a candle. If you take a candle of the month and then you look at the chart of the monthly chart of Bitcoin, where one candle equals 1 month of price action, you'll see a slightly upward trend, but very tight range. So basically it's going up and down, up and down, up and down. And come end of November, when that candle closes, meaning that the month is over, right? November starts, and there a new candle starts to get formed. A lot of, like, good traders place an order on for example, or a bullish candle is a green candle, right? A candle that's going up in price. If that candle closes at its peak at the top, that's a very strong bullish signal, meaning there's very likely that the price will go up. The probability of it going up is very high. Now, your risk is all the way down to the bottom of the range. So high probability, but also high risk reward, because you don't know if it could go all the way down to the bottom of the range and then stay in that range for a long time. But having that candle close at the top, it's a very strong bull signal, which a lot of traders take and actually want a move upwards. So if you look at a chart of any instrument, they're all the same. I mean, some of them look a little different, but because of liquidity. But never mind that. Just a regular instrument, you take Apple, Microsoft, anything, and you look at, what's happening is you get breakouts, right? So you have consolidation, which means price is going like this, and then a breakout to the upside, let's say, and then you get more consolidation, more sideways movement, and then another breakout. So that's a two-legged breakout, meaning it went up, consolidated, and then it went up again. Usually that move is about the same size as the previous move. In which case, not to get too complicated or anything, but in which case, that would mean that the people who saw that big jump up could essentially buy again and wait for that second jump up. And so that's what I'm trying to say, is that the whole notion of just wait till it's cheap to buy may not apply as well. Also, you don't know what that bottom is. Nobody knows.
Right. You can't time the market, or it's very hard to.
And also think about it. If the bulls, people that are think the price is going up, if they're buying a strong bull signal, what are the bears doing? Well, when the market's going down, they see a strong bear signal and they short even more, looking for another breakout to the downside. So you might be thinking that you're getting a discount, but essentially you're still maybe at the middle of the range, and price keeps coming down even more. Which you could argue, okay, well, good, I buy more, but you just don't know where that bottom is. Nobody does. So that's that's what makes it really hard. Really, is it's just the more probability that, for example, you see something going up. The probability is that it is going to keep going up. Most people think, oh, it's going up, so the probability is that it's going down. But that's not the case. If something's going up, the probability is that it's going to go up higher. Now, how much and when and all that's a story for you and your chart and your own trading setup or whatever. But the probability of it going up after a big move up is high. But the problem is your risk is very big, because before it goes up, maybe it comes down a lot. So you see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Whereas most people think, okay, it's really high, it can't go any higher. It's a high probability that it comes down, but that's not the case. The probability is that the trend will continue. It's like a big or a very popular saying, trade the trend or follow the trend. And that's why. Basically.
You have to know what the trend is, at least to start with.
and there's a point where there's a ceiling. So even if
Right.
the trend keeps going up, there's a point where. And what happens basically, if you think about it, why does the price go down? Well, because there's a lot of sellers, right? There's more sellers than buyers, basically. So if it's going up and up and up, at some point, the people that bought early are going to take profits. What do they do to take profits? Sell. And then there's bears who are just waiting for the price to hit so they can sell. So all those sellers make the price go down again.
Well, of course.
And that's the cycle,
Yeah, I know you talked about shorting the market in a previous episode, which probably there's a lot to that I'm still trying to wrap my head around.
Right.
So I know that you said one of the current events that could influence the direction of the market is the upcoming election.
Almost definitely.
Yeah. So definitely I don't try to get too political on the show, and if we do, we try to keep it nonpartisan. I don't know about you, I feel like even despite all the polls or a lot of the momentum or betting odds going in Trump's favor, I just do not see him winning. I don't think it will happen. So there's betting apps such as Kalshi, I believe that's one of them, and another one called Predict It. And currently a lot of the betting odds are more in Trump's favor, but the way I see that, that's similar to what you talk about the market. Like, I'm a registered independent. This has no influence of who I voted for, which I did vote early, but, I'm a registered independent, so I'm not really tied to either party. I'm just looking at this from a more realist standpoint. I really don't think Trump's going to win, so the way I see it is the shares, if you want to trade or you want to put them on Kamala, it's like lower right now, so now's the time to buy in those shares, or in the least, I'll basically put a lot of shares on Predict It, not necessarily on Kamala, but just for Trump to lose, because you could go yes or no for a specific candidate. And I feel like right now, since people are thinking, oh, the momentum's going in Trump's favor, that's when I see it as an opportunity, kind of like with sports betting, to bet on who's currently the underdog so you have a better payout. Kind of like, if Kansas City's behind 10 points one game, I'm going to put money on them because their odds are jumping up. They have those underdog odds, so they usually come back, and then I end up getting a huge payout. I don't know about you, and this might surprise some people, but I really think the deciding issue that will put Kamala over the top is abortion. I don't know how you feel about that.
It's a very popular, I guess, or very... It's an easy topic to talk about because everybody has an opinion about that. I mean, I don't care who you are. You know what the question is, whether, abortion is ethical or should be whatever. But I don't think it's as big an issue as people make it out to be, because things are not really going to change much depending on who's president on that issue. They make it seem like it is, because that's, it's better to talk about that than actually fiscal policy, for example, or taxes. Right. Nobody wants to hear that shit. And the reason why it's such a good popular topic, or something that grabs so much attention, is because It's an ethical, moral question that doesn't really have a good answer. Whichever camp you're on, there's always going to be someone with a good argument on the other side. And ultimately, I think both sides are kind of like saying the same thing. Hey, I care about people. I care about, we're not being evil. Like, right. Not one side is going to be like, oh, we like this side because we're evil. Oh no, there's like, we're the righteous ones, right? But in any case, just to answer your question, I don't think that's going to matter as much as we like to think that it is. But it is playing into people's emotions, and maybe they vote more with their emotions than the logical perspective. But just putting that aside for just a little bit, I would say, you were mentioning that you can bet on the outcome of the election, and then therefore certain stocks might go up, certain stocks might go down. But I think that's a very tricky trade because it's not a direct trade, right? Like if for example, you put a trade or a bet that, Kamala will win, then that's a direct trade where you say, okay, Kamala wins, therefore I win. But the one you're kind of talking about is Kamala wins, therefore this stock goes up. And it's not a direct correlation because she could win and then the stock could still go down, right? It's not 100% certain that just because of that outcome, the other outcome will happen. So that's a tricky one.
Yeah, as far as it has to do with actual stocks in the market, we don't really know that outcome. But
right.
As far as it goes, it's kind of like you're putting money on candidates.
Okay, but let's say you bet on the actual election. You're saying, and I'm not,
it's basically a win or lose. If you win, you get the payout. Exactly. You lose the money.
Right, but let's take the our bias away from. Let's just like kind of be objective about what's going on, what we think is going on, or whatever we see on the news or the information that we have, us too as individuals, and let's just take an objective stance or kind of like bet on it. You're saying you would put your money on Kamala, right?
Yes.
Okay. I would actually not. I would put my money on Trump. And again, it's not because I like him. It's not because I don't like her or whatever. No. It's just if I would put my objective kind of like feelings aside, bet on it.
No, I'm betting from a nonpartisan standpoint as well.
Right.
Like I said, it has no influence of who I vote for. In fact, people say like, oh, your vote matters. I still vote. I personally don't think it really matters or makes any difference, but I still do it.
Good. I think you're a little bit of an exception. I don't think most people vote. I mean, at least when I was in college, which was about 15 years ago, the statistics or demographic of voters was very old. It's older people, and generally, generally, white people that live in prominent neighborhoods and that kind of thing. Those are the ones that are usually voters. And before I get too ahead of myself, I do have to mention that the electoral college is a very complicated system of election, and most people do not understand how it works. So the popular vote is not what's going to decide the election. It's going to play a part, but it doesn't really decide the outcome completely. One of the candidates could win the popular vote and lose the election.
Oh, it's happened before.
Yep.
George W. Bush and Al Gore in 2000, which was the first election I was old enough to watch, where Al Gore actually received more of the popular vote, but it all came down to Florida, which still had like enough electoral votes to decide who won the election, and they had a whole bunch of recounts and stuff, and George Bush ended up winning Florida by a small margin, so he lost the popular vote, but he still won the electoral college. Wow. I think it was like 271 to 267 was the final result, so he still became president, even though he got less votes. Some people argue in favor of abolishing the electoral college because they think a vote's a vote. It should just matter, who across the country gets the most votes, no matter what state. But then people who are for the electoral college, they think it's a good thing that the founders of the country established it because they wanted every state to have a voice depending on, their population. Of course, if a state's more populated, it has more electoral votes. If it's got less people, then it has less electoral votes. And basically, the electoral votes are based on the population, which chooses how many representatives they have, and then every state, no matter what, has 2 senators, because they just wanted every state to have equal representation in the Senate, which means at a minimum, a state has to have at least 3 electoral votes. California has the most electoral votes because they are the most populated state. And the deal with that is, you look at the states behind California. Texas has about 40. I think Florida has about maybe 30, 31. New York has about, I think, maybe 27, 29, something like that. So those states hold the most electoral votes. And the people who are for the Electoral College say that if it only mattered about the popular vote, every candidate would just spend time in like those 4 states. Maybe a few of the other states, like Pennsylvania, that might have 19. But at the end of the day, they'd all just spend time in those states with the most people, and then places like Nevada, where I'm in, that only has 6 electoral votes, probably not a lot of people would campaign there unless they were trying to do a fundraiser in Las Vegas. But then even states like Colorado, they've got 10, but like they wouldn't spend time there. Or Arizona, Wisconsin, Virginia, Oklahoma, places like that, they would just stay away from. So that kind of gives some of those other states, usually like the non-coastal states, you know, the middle U.S. as they call it, it gives them more influence over the election. So I still think the Electoral College, while it is kind of complicated, or it does sometimes complicate things, I still think it is a system that should
I don't think it's a
stay
bad
in
thing
place.
either. I don't think it's a bad thing either. It's just, it undermines people's votes. That's my only beef with it. Really, that's my only beef. It probably is a much easier, not easier, but just a better, more modern way of election. This probably is the best system that we have in the world. I don't know, but and there are reasons, you know, big reasons why. I mean, the United States is such a big country. Like even Texas, I think, is like bigger than a lot of countries in Europe and stuff. Just one state. So
oh yeah, they're more
huge country,
populated than some of those smaller countries.
Yeah, and when you have so many people, you know, you need to streamline things. You can't just have everybody's vote count the same, I guess. But that's my only beef with it, is that it undermines the popular vote, and that's what people really like to brag about being an American citizen, is that they have the right to vote. And you know, it's kind of like, you know, you're born with it as an American citizen, and doesn't matter what religion or all that kind of thing. So it's a very powerful thing that we've always kind of had a big stake on, the voting. But when it doesn't actually decide the election, then it kind of undermines it. But in any case, let's just go with the popular vote. Let's just pretend that whoever wins the popular vote wins the election. Just for now, just to summarize our, like, whether we think it's going one way or the other, and our arguments for it. So let's just say that the popular vote is going to decide the election. So you still would say that Kamala would win.
Oh, a lot easier. Hands down, I think she'll get the popular vote. It's like even 2016, based on what I've seen, it did not look like Trump even won the popular vote then, but he still won the Electoral College because he had an overwhelming deficit in California. He lost California by so many votes. So basically saying that's what played a huge part with him not getting the popular vote. But if it wasn't for California, yeah, he'd probably still get the popular vote. The Electoral College is kind of a toss-up, and that's why I don't get why there is kind of that gap with Trump, because the polls are very close. They're practically tied for who would win the popular vote. And I know the polls don't necessarily have a lot of influence. It's kind of like a football game.
Yeah,
Betting odds can suggest, hey, in Sunday's game with Baltimore and Cleveland, the betting odds had Baltimore as a very good favorite, but they still lost to Cleveland 29-24. At the end of the day, just like whatever team comes to the field, whoever shows up. And in this case, it's basically the teams would be the voters of the candidates. Because that was one thing I was saying about how abortion will play more of a part in the election than a lot of people think, because it was highly underestimated in the last midterm election in 2022. Because after the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade, the momentum automatically reversed. Because Republicans were having a lot of momentum Their turnout in the primaries was very high. They were winning special elections that people didn't expect them to win. But right after Roe v. Wade got overturned, so many Democrats got motivated to go vote. And then even though a lot of polls right before Election Day on Real Clear Politics showed Republicans winning a lot of the House seats, having a steady House majority, winning some of the Senate elections that were toss-ups, they ended up losing a lot of them. Because whatever party holds power in the White House, whatever party is of the president, that party tends to do bad in the next midterm election. For example, Bill Clinton was in power 1992. Republicans swept House and Senate 1994, that midterm election. Think about Barack Obama, 2008. He was a Democrat, but then 2010, Republicans flipped the House and almost flipped the Senate, but the Democrats had a supermajority at the time, so it would have been hard, but Republicans still gained 7 seats in the Senate. Of course, I know a lot of Republican voters kind of took it for granted, like, hey, we have history on our side. They just decided to not vote because the lines were way too long on Election Day, and I know Republicans tend to wait till Election Day to vote. More Democrats vote early. It was right after Roe v. Wade got overturned when they showed a lot of statistics, and it showed Democrats started performing better in a lot of the primaries, a lot of the special elections after that. And then
probably united them a little more too.
They outperformed a lot of the polls.
It made them vote more.
It did, and I feel like it will play more of a part this election too, because personally, like I said, this is
you got a good point.
This is just me being a realist.
You got a good point. It's a good argument. It's a good argument because think about it, like they're really going after women voting, right? Like I mean, the whole
it's a lot of the suburban
Michelle
women.
Obama coming up, and
right,
you know, all the things that are going on. A lot of on the feminist women getting them to vote, and there's a lot of them. Like I'm not saying there's a lot of feminists. I'm just saying there's a lot of women, that don't vote regularly, that don't not traditionally or over the years they have not shown to be voters, and they could potentially get out there and vote just for this one election where it actually matters to them and make the difference. I totally agree. And I think that's their strategy. I mean, it looks like that's what it is because they keep mentioning every single, and the thing is like, as a single guy, it's like, I could care less about that, right? Like, I mean, I'm more interested in I'm a trader. So I'm interested in the fiscal policy and taxes and all that.
Exactly. And to be honest, the economy and inflation are the issues of highest importance to me too. Kind of like what I said. Of course, Republicans, they had to play defense and they were able to defend a lot of their Senate seats that were up for election since more of their incumbents were up, or a lot of their seats up for election in 2022 were held by Republicans. This year it's the opposite. Even if there's not a lot of high Republican turnout, they are expected to flip a couple of seats with incumbent Democrats, which are in more Republican states, which are Montana and West Virginia. But going back to what I was saying is that I feel abortion has more of an influence than a lot of pundits, specifically those on the right, think, because, of course, in states like Alabama or Utah, Tennessee, Republican states, it won't really matter. It won't have much of an influence, but for a lot of the battleground states like Nevada, which is where I'm in, Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Georgia, North Carolina, Arizona, it could play a huge part. And I think especially it will play a part in Nevada and Arizona because specifically there is a proposition on the ballots in those states to grant the right to an abortion in the state's constitution. And I think that will bring a lot of turnout. Specifically what they say, the suburban women can play that toss-up, that swing group. And I feel like although they might care about the economy and stuff, and according to a lot of polls, more voters trust Trump. More voters think Trump will do a better job with the economy. But abortion, like you said, they will kind of think with their emotions and stuff and be like, I don't want all these Republicans taking away abortion access. They'll end up voting Democrat. Now, I personally don't think Trump will propose a national abortion ban, but I think what it's also done, what it's also done is that you have a lot of Republicans that try to cater to like more the religious or the evangelical type of voters. And they don't really see abortion as a political issue. They see it as a moral issue. They're like, oh, you're just murdering innocent children. That's how they feel. Now, as you said, there's arguments for both sides, which we don't really need to get into that because it's been said too many times. It's
Yeah.
just going in circles. I'm just stating what is and how I feel like a lot of voters will end up
But
making
see,
their decisions.
and that's kind of where I disagree with the Kamala winning decision or just probability, because of who the voters are in reality, right? I mean, you talk to people, they're saying they're gonna vote, but a lot of them are not gonna vote. Like, let's be honest, like you take a random 100 people that are voting age and all that, and most people don't vote. They might say that they're going to vote, or they might say, if I did vote, I would vote for this, but they don't actually go and do it. And that was the
Yeah.
case, like I said, 15 years ago when I went to college and studied government classes.
Exactly.
That was basically the gist of it. Is the demographic of the voter is usually older, usually people who are more conservative. Basically, that's why most of the presidents that we've had have been not conservative in the party. I don't mean conservative party. I mean conservative demeanor, or because even I mean, I would argue that the most liberal presidents that we've had a lot of conservative views on a lot of things, right? I mean, Kamala is kind of like the exception, where she's very liberal, I guess, right? But if you look, I mean, George Bush, even Bill Clinton, I would say, I mean, he didn't seem too radical to the left in any case, or right, or they weren't pushing the agenda for the modern or today's liberal, I guess, or Democrat, where it has shifted. I think that's going towards more liberal. I would argue probably Obama was one of the ones that started, with him being the first, black president or whatever it is. But the reason why I disagree that Kamala is going to win is because of that, because the voter demographic is probably going to go with Trump.
I just still think, even though abortion probably won't have a crazy influence on the election, I feel like it will persuade enough voters, specifically like a lot of suburban women who are kind of swing voters, to end up voting Democrat, which will be enough votes to decide the election.
That's a good point. I can see that. I can see that. I can see your argument. Yeah.
If you hang out at a lot of bars, abortion plays more of a part than a lot of people think, because guess what? Nobody's going to stop having sex. The whole deal is, with abortion, I've noticed that the Democrats have been really smart about that, because I feel like they've put a lot of Republicans, they have a lot of Republicans in a corner right now, because the deal is a lot of Republicans don't want to cave in or say, okay, politely support expanding the limits of abortion. Maybe instead of just 6 weeks like they do in Texas, maybe do it to 3 months, stuff like that. But a lot of them are too scared to do that because they don't want to lose any of their more religious base. But I've noticed at least half of registered voters from the evangelical group don't even vote. Kind of like what you said, a lot of people don't vote. So a lot of the people that actually support strict abortion limits, they don't even vote, because a lot of them are like, well, it's immoral to vote, or we don't have a strong Christian candidate running. So at the end of the day, like, if there's anyone watching that's pro-life, I'm not attacking you, because at the end of the day, you could argue morality all you want on the issue, but this is not about what's right or wrong, or what's morally right. This is about how you win elections. And if Republicans want to win more elections, they will have to cave in, or at least be more open or more loose on.
And they are. I mean, even Trump has been pretty relaxed on the whole thing, and he hasn't been like, no, like, I don't know.
Well, he says
50 years ago he would say no, absolutely no abortion.
Right. Well, he knows that if he's like, yeah, I want to restrict it, that's automatically a losing issue. That is political suicide. Even though he has publicly said he would not sign a federal abortion ban, the opposite side can still play attack ads saying, oh, he will ban abortion nationwide. And that will create some of the fear-mongering, which will get some people to be like, oh, okay, well, I gotta vote against Trump. We know it doesn't matter what side they're on. There's a lot of propaganda out there, and you just kind of have to do your homework on the candidates. But I'm just saying, at the end of the day, if Republicans want to win the election, they have to stop catering to the ultra-religious people, because at the end of the day, they probably won't even vote.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Again, I think you have a really good point. I would say that even though it is a big topic and that could potentially curve the vote in one way or the other, I still think that the more pressing issues that the country's facing, I think those in those I think Trump has a better position, and he has the experience because he was president for 4 years. And regardless of what people say, I mean, we can argue that we had prosperous times back then when he was president. Now people hated him. A lot of people hated him, and the things he says are inflammatory and all that. That doesn't change, but no one can argue that. Also, militarily speaking, he's going to be a more powerful candidate. And with all this conflict going on in the world and the agenda that he has in how to solve a lot of diplomatic issues, I think he's got a stronger position than Kamala. And I think those might play a role, even though they might be obscure right now because the abortion topic is taking most of the limelight. I think still the most important issues, economic and geopolitics, might play a big role in this election because people might vote with their brain rather than their emotions. Now, if you vote with your brain, there might be a lot of good arguments to vote for Kamala, but they just don't show them. They just don't show those attributes. They keep going on women's rights and all that, and it's tricky because, like I said, I don't think it would influence that many people's lives as much as the other stuff.
Definitely not. Yeah. And like I said, I'm a registered independent, so I've kind of flip-flopped throughout my lifetime. I was raised a George Bush Republican. When I went to college, I got tied up with the whole Bernie Sanders thing, like, feel the burn, I want all this free stuff. But then after the pandemic, it wasn't necessarily free money, but it was those stimulus checks.
Yep.
Which, as you said, when they started printing more money to do all that, because I used to think, hey, if you just print whatever money you want, you can pay for anything. But that's when I realized it's all that spending, all that extra money. In return, you still paid for it because the price of everything went up. Exactly. And that's what caused a lot of the inflation. So you're going to end up spending that stimulus check one way or another.
Yep. And it's not enough. It's because it's not repetitive, right? It's just a little extra cash. Money. Yeah. And a lot of that money went to big companies, and they probably put it into a lot of good things. I mean, they might have, but ultimately it's the private entity, so they can do as they see fit. And also think about it, like the government prints money right through the Fed. They print money, and then they get that money back with taxation. So it's kind of like it's like, I'll give you more tickets because the tickets are coming back to me. Like in a fair or something, they give you tickets, but you have to spend those tickets, in the fair. It's kind of like the same thing, right? They're printing money, but they know that money's coming back, and the more they print, the more it's coming back. So it's like a never-ending cycle of madness. But it's kind of like the way things have to be with the modern economy and global, it being global and everything. Like printing money, in my opinion, is a must in the modern economic, landscape. But going back to, I will just say one thing, last thing. When in 2020, when Biden was running against Trump, I did not think Biden was going to win. And I got that. You did?
Yes.
Okay. I got that completely wrong. I was like 100% sure that Trump was going to win. So I could be completely wrong again. But this time I'm a little wiser, and I'm thinking a little more objectively, I think. Again, it's not like I'm a hardcore Trump fan or anything. It's just that I really never had an issue with the guy. And given the options, I'd probably choose him just because he's the lesser of two evils. I can't really believe that he ran again because, sometimes you got to know that you're the problem, right? Like maybe taking yourself out of the equation is the best move. And I think that would have been the best move for America if Trump had just basically stepped out. And look at his vice president. I think he's a much more better candidate for the White House. And even Kamala's Waltz, I think, is the vice president, or, I think those two guys are probably better candidates than the actual candidates because they're just more professional.
I will say for one thing, that debate with the two vice presidential candidates,
that was a good debate
compared to the presidential debate with Trump and Kamala, it was so much, let's just say, so much more easy to watch. It felt a lot more smooth than the presidential debate.
It was like
the presidential debate was them just going rah, 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 rah. And then it's like the vice presidential debate.
They're eating the dogs.
They had even though JD Vance and Tim Walz had opposing viewpoints, they still shook hands at the beginning and end of the debate, and they were still, for the most part, not really disrespectful of each other. The only time there was any conflict was when the moderators fact-checked J.D. Vance on something, and he was like, okay, you said you wouldn't fact-check me, but since you want to do it, let me prove to you that I'm right and you're wrong. So that was like the only thing where there was, you know, maybe a little bit of tension. But other than that,
it was
to watch. And I understand what you say. I feel like both the vice presidential candidates are in a much better position to be president than the actual presidential candidates.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day,
which might play a role too. I mean, people might vote for Trump because of him, because of the J.D. Vance. Yeah, because he's pretty articulate, you know, pretty straightforward. I think his Achilles heel, basically the only wrong thing I see about him is that he has to support Trump's stuff, right? Like he's running with Trump, so whatever Trump says, then he has to back it up. And sometimes he's put between a hard place and a rock.
But I also think at the end of the day, Taylor Swift will decide the election.
There you go.
Because she endorsed Kamala. I told people at comedy shows I've done, if she can decide who wins the Super Bowl, she can decide who wins the election. And plus, going back to motivating voters, her fan base is so dedicated to her that she got
they're younger though,
and young people to go out and register.
And if they do, it could be a deciding factor.
I feel like that will play a huge part, especially in a lot of the battleground states. But I think we both raised some really good talking points in this episode, and it's definitely going to be one to watch. I just hope that we actually know who won on election night, that we're not stuck waiting 2 or 3 days like the previous elections. Because like in 2020, there was no clear winner on election night. I think it wasn't until like 3 days later when they had called it for Biden. But even then, Trump tried to fight back saying they stole it. But that's a completely different conversation.
We're not going to get
into to talk about that here. We try to keep it friendly. We try to keep it nonpartisan. But what do you
think? We're in the middle.
Who did you vote for? If you're okay with sharing that information, who do you think's going to win? Comment below. Tell us your opinion. And we can't wait to see you on the next episode of the Napoleon and Gueco podcast.
Peace, everyone.
Peace. So I hope you really enjoyed this video. Make sure to subscribe so you're always notified when we produce new content on this channel. And I will see you in the next video.